What's up, guys? Teammates Travels here, and we drove about 16 hours in our EV, and these are some of the things that we learned from that experience. So, first things first, pack plenty of snacks, okay? You're going to be driving consistently for at least 2 to 3 hours, normally in between charges at least. So, you need to make sure that if you're feeling snackish, you have something at the tips of your hands that you can grab onto.
Yeah, guys, and we did this trip with our toddler. He's 2 years old. He is in the middle of his toddlerdom. And so having food readily available helps to prevent tantrums from the toddler and your fellow drivers.
Hmm.
So having snacks on hand at all times just keeps everybody happy, especially because rest stops are not always going to be open at the time of which you're driving. It's not like all the time when you're driving an electric vehicle that the charging station is going to be in a place that has an open rest stop. So if you were banking on eating when you get there, you might end up disappointed if there's not an open place to eat. So just always have some snacks as a backup.
Case in point, when we first started off our trip, we left in the dead of night because we wanted to make sure that we could capitalize on the fact that our toddler was sleeping. And so the first few stops that we had in the EV were all, they
Close.
were closed. There was nothing nearby. It was a Target parking lot. Another one was like a parking lot where there was a Wendy's, but it was closed. Another one was just like a random police station. So there's not always going to be a guarantee that there will be a restaurant either.
Yeah, and I think now that you say that, I think we stopped 5 times, and the first three stops did not have any food places that were open. So when we were going up, so it's just important to plan ahead in terms of that.
And that moves us right on to point number two. Always have a plan B for any sort of rest stops in terms of using the restroom.
Yes. So again, when we especially were driving up, it was the first time that we had ever taken a drive that long, and by the second stop, yeah, by the second stop, we both had to use the restroom. The baby's in diapers, but we had to use the restroom,
Pretty
and
convenient for him.
pretty convenient for him, exactly. But we kind of had to, tug on some heartstrings to allow some people at the nearby hotel to allow us to use the restroom. And so I think this is where, planning ahead just for the trip in general and having a plan B really, really is helpful. Just in case wherever the charging station might be, especially if it's in the middle of nowhere, you can see, oh, hey, if I leave at 2 a.m., this place might not have anywhere to use the restroom. Definitely, definitely have a plan B. This is where apps like PlugShare kind of come in handy because they can give you a lot of different options just in case you don't like the route that whatever your EV may have planned for you um, has picked.
And I just want to make sure that I'm making the point. It's not that any of the stops we were at were actually in the middle of nowhere. It's mainly because of the time that we chose to leave. And so, because we chose to leave at that time, we were limited in our options to point number one about the food choices that we had, and point number two, restrooms. Okay. And actually, that sort of moves us on to point number three.
Which is kind of
Yeah, it kind of contradicts the first 2 points. But I think that if I had to do everything all over again, I would continue to do this. And point number three is to leave early to avoid all of the possible traffic, okay? Not just traffic on the road, but also traffic at your EV charger of choice.
mm-hmm.
We were very fortunate that every place that we stopped at on the way up, we saw very few other Teslas actually. Not many other people were traveling at the same time as us. And that just made things super convenient for one, for our charging speeds, right? So we maximized on the capacity of how fast we're able to charge, albeit all of the charges we were at were V3 superchargers. So, but if you had stopped at like a V2 supercharger, you know that the more people that are there just means that you get slower speeds. Not to mention the more people that are there, it only allowed you to charge up to a certain amount, maybe 80%, before you get hit with idle fees. So, yes, I still think that I would do it all over again. I would leave super early just to avoid traffic.
And as a basis of comparison, when we drove up, we left um, at 12 a.m. And when we drove back, we left at 3 a.m. And the amount of traffic that we ran into at the charging stations was vastly different because of the time of day that we were traveling. Like when we were driving up, when we left earlier, we never encountered a charging station that was full or anything like that. But when we were driving down, we did get to a charging station. I think it was only one. Now that I think off the top of my head, I think it was only one, but there was like a queue, like all of the charging bays were full. So it definitely made a difference from the standpoint of traveling with a toddler, because of course we have to discuss that part. Um, he did well either way, but he definitely napped better when we left earlier, kind of. But I think that made it a bit easier to leave when he was asleep, so that at least one or two of the legs of the 5 leg trip he was asleep on. So yeah.
And being completely transparent, on the way back down, it was a holiday weekend. So
Mhm.
there were definitely more people traveling because of the holidays. So you do have to throw that in there. Point number 4. What I learned was that even though Tesla does a very good job of making sure with their route planning that you're going to maximize your charge and that you're always going to make sure you're going to have battery, it overcompensates drastically. Okay. So, most of the time, Tesla's going to tell you, hey, you're not going to make it in this amount of time. Your battery's going to be super low. It's going to be in the negatives, or that it's going to be in single digit percentage wise. So, we need to make sure that you stop earlier than maybe what we originally projected. I can say without a shadow of a doubt that I definitely could have probably skipped one charge or just gone further most of the times because of how conservative Tesla is.
Mhm.
So that's when things like plug share, right? If you want to do your own sort of route planning, you definitely can do it and you would likely finish your trip faster. It is super convenient that Tesla offers this, though, no doubt. It's just super plug and play. You don't have to worry about anything. But you will likely suffer from, I don't want to say overcharging, but maybe having to stop to charge more frequently just because with how conservative they are. I wish that there was maybe some sort of option where you could be a little bit less, a little bit more aggressive versus more conservative with that so that you just get more range and you don't have to stop as much.
I will say though that it definitely did um, give me more confidence in terms of not being fearful of running out of charge while driving, because it definitely felt like the vehicle was going to make sure beyond a shadow of a doubt that we did not run into a situation where we would run out of charge. That part I really appreciated. It wasn't like it was pushing everything to the limit. It was, like Max said, actually the opposite. It was very, very conservative. And so it made me feel safe, especially traveling with a child, that okay, like even though when we plugged everything in, because we plugged everything into PlugShare and Tesla on their website, like on the computer website, you know, approximately how many charging stops we would have. And originally we were supposed to only have 4, and it recalculated to 5. And I was like, oh, I thought we were only going to have 4 stops. But again, I still felt like, okay, well, we're stopping for a reason, and I'm not afraid that I'm going to be out in the boonies and not have any charge. So I think it's kind of two ways to think about it, which actually leads us into point 5. My hypothesis, and Mac will give you his opinion on the matter, but my hypothesis is that if you stay the speed limit, I think I want to say like plus or minus 5 miles per hour, that you will be closer to your originally planned amount of stops. So when we first embarked on the over 16-hour trip, we had, like I said, originally 4 stops that were planned. And I think when we started driving, and we started driving faster than 65, 75 miles an hour, whatever it was on the road, then it recalculated and put another charging stop in. I feel like if you're not driving faster, then obviously you're not using as much energy as quickly. So most likely you'll be able to stop less, but I'm not sure. I feel like, when we speed, we think we're going to get somewhere quicker. But in this case, I feel like it's going to all wash out in the end. anyway, because if you go faster, you're going to have to charge more. But that's just kind of how I experienced it to happen. What do you think?
I don't really agree with that statement at all.
Oh my god.
Because what I found when I was driving in the Tesla is that the faster you go, sure, it'll show you that it anticipates when you're going to stop that your percentage is going to be, let's say, it'll drop from 17% to 15% or something like that. But if ever I actually just canceled out of the route and then went back into it, that percentage jumped up. So that's why I think that Tesla, they leave quite a bit of cushion to make sure that you don't run out of battery. So I don't necessarily think that staying the speed limit actually plays a huge role. And again, this is just in my limited experience. I think that you probably could actually go a little bit faster. And if it does recalculate, you could probably just cancel out of the route, start it all over again, and it's still going to get you to where you need to be. So it kind of goes back to the previous point. It's just that Tesla's so conservative with their battery expectations because they don't want you to end up without a battery or charge, to where that's the reason why they calculate the percentage the way that it does. But I think definitely going again, and we do plan on doing more road trips. I'm definitely going to try and etch as much battery out as I can. If there's another option for another charger that I know of, that maybe is another 30 miles away or something like that. Tesla says I'm going to make it there in 8% versus 15%. I'm going to go that extra 30 miles so I can go ahead and make it there. For one, it's going to be better for the battery because you're going to get a lower state of charge, which means that you're going to get faster charging speeds. Also, it's going to give the battery a longer time to warm up. So I just think that it would be better overall.
The last point is that it doesn't feel as long as it actually is. So prior to us taking this road trip, I honestly was concerned with um, having to stop and charge it as much. And then with the length of travel with our toddler, he is a wild child. That's just his personality. He's very like rambunctious and stuff like that. And I was concerned about him on the road for that long, as I stated. Anyway, it really does not feel as long as it actually is. And I think it's because of all of the stops. Um, he's exceeded the age where you have to abide by that 2 hour rule of a car seat and stuff like that some people don't even really even care about. But it just, I find, really, really helped for everyone to get out and stretch their legs, walk around a bit, shake some of the soreness off from sitting so long. And 5 stops, really, in the grand scheme of things, wasn't that much. The average time for charging was
It was around 30 minutes.
30 minutes. That's not taking a huge chunk out of your travel time, but you can at least, break things up. And so, even on one of our earlier videos that we shot when we got to our destination, we had miscalculated the time because we didn't realize that we had been driving for 2.5 hours longer than we actually were. So it really, really wasn't that bad. And to be honest, we had a trip in a standard gasoline vehicle that was 6 to 8 hours, and it felt so much longer because we didn't stop. So that is actually one of the reasons why I'm so gung ho about doing more road trips in an electrical vehicle, because it was a fine time. So, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. So this is Teammates Travels. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Like, comment, and share. And we will do the best to comment back on any replies that you guys have down below. Until you guys see us again, peace.